Hi, and welcome to the Bookkeepers Podcast. Today, I am joined by Alexis Kingsbury from AirManual. Hi, Alexis, how are you?
Hi there, Joe. Yes, very well, thank you. Good to be here.
Amazing, amazing. Alexis and I have met a few times recently. Once, me and Zoe were coming off of the stage at EMC, and you were just about to walk on the stage. So it was very dark. I was really thrilled that I'd finished talking. It was such a big stage, wasn't it? It was a massive audience and big stage. So we didn't get to talk then because we were just passing ships. And then we saw each other at a Profit First event. And that's where we realized, oh, you were the guy behind the stage. So we had a chat then. And then we really had a good catch up at the
Yeah.
Digital Accountancy Show last week, which was really, really great fun. And realized that we needed to get you in front of our audience to talk more about systems and processes and how we can make this whole big job, we always know we need to get it done, but it's like when you get started, how do you do it in a way that doesn't get lost and like document it in a way that means that other people would know what you were talking about and it's just not gobbledygook from your head, because that's how I used to start mine. So Alexis, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction about you and who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joe. So I'm Alexis. My background, like nearly 20 years ago, was as a management consultant, working with typically large businesses on their processes and their people operations and so on. Particularly used to specialize a lot in finance transformation, so working with the finance departments of large organizations like Transport for London and AstraZeneca and all these Honda and so on, helping them make their finance processes super efficient and work really smoothly and without errors and all this kind of stuff. But my heart has always been that of an entrepreneur. So like I started my first businesses when I was like 12 years old and started numerous businesses, but could never work out how to grow them beyond just me. And so I would get really busy and then I wouldn't be able to grow it anymore and I'd get stuck and I would conclude, it's because of the type of business I've chosen. You know, I've decided to do, well, one of my very early ones, which gives you a sense of my age, would have been car washing and, you know, sweeping drives of the people that lived in the village. And I'd get like £3 to wash a car. But it's, you know, I'd get to this point where I'm just stuck, like I can't grow it beyond me. And so I'd end up going, oh, well, I'll start a new business. And so I started a new one. I worked out that I did more. I think I did 10 within my first 10 years of doing that, because when I left the management consultancy, I was like, right, I'm getting back into entrepreneurship. I want to do this. And I've now learned what I was doing wrong back then. And what I was doing wrong back then was I was getting really busy. The business relied on me. I hadn't worked out how to hand it over to anyone else. And so it would hold back my growth. And so when I was then a consultant, I was seeing how I was able to help these teams to grow or to be more efficient or whatever. And it was through this combination of people and processes. And so when I then left and started my consulting practice and then my first software business and then my second software business and so on, like I've essentially been using what I learned to be able to grow and scale these businesses really effectively. And so it's actually been something I really struggled with. Like even then, once I left as a consultant, I wasn't particularly good at sort of training people and managing people and handing over my work. I've always been a control freak and would get frustrated when people make mistakes or ask me questions that I've already told them stuff before. And so it did take me a long time before I found an approach that really worked for me. And then that just, like for my first software business, that just completely changed everything. And so we went from just like 2-3 of us to a big team with team members from 9 countries across 5 continents, 7-figure revenues, working with over 600 organizations around the world, including Google and 3M and Swarovski and so on. And so that was kind of amazing, right? Once I removed that bottleneck, suddenly we got these amazing results. And so I had the first software business, Spider Gap, and then second software business, AirManual. And AirManual really came out of a desire to help other people to do the same, to be able to hand over those tasks and build a business that doesn't rely on them.
Wow. It's so interesting, isn't it? How people assume that it's either the industry they're in that's wrong, hence that's why they can't build business. I remember I've said that in the past. I've said, oh goodness, who would pick to be in a bookkeeping practice? Like, this is the hardest thing ever. But actually, any industry, any business that's going to grow is tricky, difficult.
Yeah.
And then it's that misconception of what is a business and what is a self-employed job you've created for yourself. And they're two very different things. And if you want to just work for yourself and not have anyone in your team, that's absolutely fine. But there are still ways of making that easier. But just know that you have created that job and it's not a true business. A true business needs to be able to run with you or without you. But also then when you throw into that entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial thinkers are not naturally very good at being detailed and systems and processes. They're kind of innovators and creative thinkers. And I know from if you try and get things out of, I'm like, oh, it's a resistance of trying. It's just done like that. Like, surely that's how I see it in my brain. It's just like this. I had it today with Zoe, actually. It was about the podcast. She was telling me she's invested in a Stream Deck. So these buttons that you press and she said it opens up all the things I need to do to get the podcast ready. And I went, oh, I said, that sounds like that's a system that's been documented and processed and can be now outsourced and you don't need to do it. And she went, oh, okay. Well, who would I give it to? And I really like doing the imagery bit. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I said, but what if you got to sign it off at the end and put your creativeness, but just did that bit, but not all of the show notes and the making sure it's here and uploaded there. You don't need to do that. But we need to learn. This is not something that comes naturally. No. So we're here to talk about systems and processes. And you've created a software called AirManual. Can you give us background about AirManual, what it is, who it helps?
Sure. So I guess the reason that we created AirManual is because what we realized through growing our own businesses, but also working with other friends that were entrepreneurs and trying to build their own, is that the reason that so many entrepreneurs, business owners, etc., struggle to be able to grow and to get like good work-life balance and all these sorts of things is because the business heavily relies on them. They are the bottleneck. They are involved as part of every sale, every project or piece of client work, every hire. Like, they're the absolute pinch point for everything that goes through the business. And one of the challenges is that's correct when you first start. And I think that's what makes it hard. And I think we have to let ourselves off on this, because actually, if you too early in your business try to remove yourself and say, oh yeah, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to do any selling, I'm not going to do any of these things, then it's really hard to build your business, because you've got to learn, you've got to have the conversations with customers and understand what is it that they're excited by, what are they willing to pay for, where do they see the most value, and then you've got to work out how to deliver that and get feedback. And so a lot of early building a business does require you to be very hands-on. The hard thing is at some point you need to start letting go of tasks, because otherwise it will hold your growth back. And so what we discovered is, if you're going to build a business, build a practice that doesn't rely on you, a lot of people assume that the answer is, if I could just hire someone, if I could hire a mini me, if I could get someone who is like me and I hire them into the business, and then that solves it. And when we look at what are you actually looking to hire there, it's like, it's someone with all the knowledge that you've gained, all the experience you've gained. They're comfortable using all the tools that you use. They geek out over tax regulations and new bookkeeping tools and all these things. That's fun to them. They love working with clients, but also love the detail of working on the actual books themselves. It's like all of those things. And they don't want to run their own bookkeeping practice. They want to work for you, and they want to work at a price that you can afford. I mean, you're looking for a unicorn. right? And so the problem is that when you start saying, oh yeah, I just need to hire a little me or something like that, you actually hold yourself back because that's not really doable. And the truth is, it's not even necessary, because you don't need to hire another you. What you need to do is break down the roles that you have and hand over bits, or hand over hats that you're wearing, whether it's the hat of doing the bank reconciliations and doing these things, like handing over that, or handing over the podcast production or whatever. Like, each of those things can be handed over. And so if you're going to build a business that doesn't rely on you, you need to make it easy for team members to do things the way that you want them done. And I say the way that you want them done because it's not just about doing it the right way, and it's not just about doing it the way that they want it. It's the way that you want that done in your business. And it might be, if I take something as simple as bank reconciliations and, using Xero or something, it's like, oh, well, yeah, I would want them just to click those and that's it. It's like, yeah, but what if something goes wrong? What if there's an exception that doesn't meet the rules? How do you want them to handle that? Is that something that they just fire off an email? And how do you want that email to look? Should it be, quite sort of fluffy and, hey, hope you're doing well, and here's the thing? And should they do it piecemeal, like as soon as they identify one, or should they group them together? Or should it be a part of a report, as part of a conversation? Should they jump on the phone? All of those things, those little tiny nuance, makes up who your business is. Like the way because both could be true. Like we could build a super efficient, rapid bookkeeping business where it's a one-line email and so on. Or we could do the other end, the really nice, hey, so supportive, how are you getting on? How was your holiday? Da 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 da. By the way, I was doing the books, and both could work as super successful, highly profitable businesses, but they're likely to have different customers. But it does matter then how you deliver, because if you do the work in one way but it doesn't align with the culture, it's going to jar with your clients, and you as the business owner will ultimately go, oh, Tina, I don't like how you did that. That's not how I'd have done it. And then you end up in this really weird discussion. And so that's what it comes down to, is you have to make it easy for your team to do things the way you want them done. And I think that's the best way to look at systems and processes, rather than think of it as this clunky, operationally pointy head thing. It's like, no. It's how I make sure that the values, the culture, the style that I want, the brand that I want in my business flows through every aspect of it. And that's really powerful when you then think about that, because it's not just about the ticking this box and whatever. It's how does the whole brand of how we work, how does that flow, and what does that mean for the touch points with customers, and also the touch points with your employees? Like, what's their journey when they come into the organization? How does it feel? What do they learn? And all that kind of stuff. So that's what we solve with AirManual, is that we make it easy to give your team that guidance we make it possible to get the processes, including all the magic and so on, out of your head in less than 15 minutes and hand it over to someone else. We provide a very flexible tool that means you can combine both the technology side and data flows and capturing data, but actually with the human touch, to make sure that you've got all the kind of culture of how you work in there. We include sort of tools for mistake prevention, so that your team aren't repeating mistakes or repeating questions, and it's really easy to make it easy for them to do things right and to not drop balls without feeling micromanaged. But also we make it possible in the tool to essentially give self-service onboarding, particularly for employees, but you can use it for client onboarding. But what I love is when I have new team members, whether they're contractors, VAs, full-time employees, whatever, they go through essentially an employee onboarding checklist where they're learning all the things that they need to learn so that they can excel in the role without me having to spoon feed them. And instead I can focus my time on, I think, proper value add discussions and coaching them and asking them questions, rather than just saying, here's our values. So when you do those things, that's when you get an amazing team that are able to deliver in the way that you want them to. So that's what we do through AirManual.
It's so interesting. Like, I'm thinking back to when I've run businesses in the past and really I was growing fast, onboarding team members, onboarding clients. I had it all in my head, and I had exactly that thought. If I just had a mini me. And do you know what happened is that I found someone that was same as me. And the funny thing is, when you find someone that's just like you, what do they want to do? They want to grow their own business. So she stole loads of my clients. So
Okay.
my thought pattern changed on that. And it's really interesting. Actually, now what I look for in team members or partnerships or whatever is someone that's got completely different skill sets to me. Because actually, that really helps, because I realize I've got loads of blind spots. I think I always talk about the fact I had a bit of an ego when I was younger and was growing a business, and I thought I was better than I was, in the fact that, because my business wasn't really that profitable and it was busy and I was a busy fool and it was breaking me. But I did think that I knew more than other people. Now I look for I really recognize that everyone else had these, and amazing if you can capture things that you don't know from people in your team and get that down. That's amazing, growing this like culture and the way we do things here. And that's what I think is the real magic about this. It's like, every bookkeeper in the country can get to the end of a bank reconciliation, but there are many ways of doing it. And we all know that we have little ways that, well, I wouldn't have matched that item because of that. Or, well, I wouldn't have put it to that nominal code. Or, oh, you're going to round that penny up. I wouldn't have done that. Like, there are so many ways that bookkeepers do things. So I love that you can get out of your head, this is the way that I want things done in this way. And then you can have those special, like that time with your team members in different ways to be motivating and, really embed the vision and the values and the culture and the more of the way that we do things around here. I know that a lot of people listening will be bookkeepers and accountants, solopreneurs, sole practitioners, thinking, well, it's just me. And maybe I'll grow one day, maybe I won't. Maybe I will grow using software or AI. Maybe I don't want to build a team. Maybe I want the business to be just me. We get a lot of this where one of our ambassadors, Emma James, was adamant it was just going to be her and the technology. Unfortunately, something happened and she needed an operation and she was very poorly. She actually ended up 2 operations in that year. She had to bring on a team member or else her business would have been gone. She actually made more profit in that year and she worked less because she was recovering. She couldn't work, but because she was really systemized already, even though regardless of building. So I'd like to talk about why start now when it's just you? Why build systems and processes if it's just you? Is there any point in it, or is it doing work for work's sake? Because it's already in your head. And that's how I would have thought, like, why? It's already in my head. I know what I'm going to do.
Yes, and so it's just faster to do it rather than document it, right, and so on. And so there's certainly some truth to that. So typically we'd say once you're getting to 5+ team members, that's where you are. You're really going to creak and fall over if you don't have processes documented in some consistent single place that everyone knows where to go to, that they're kept live and up to date, and that when mistakes are made, you attack the process rather than the person, and you go and fix the process and so on. And so typically most of like customers for AirManual, they're typically organizations of 5+ team members where that's the case, right? And they might have outgrown other tools that they've used in the past, Google Docs and Loom videos and all these sorts of things. However, I have found that even when you're 1, 2, 3 team members, there is value in doing that documentation. There's a few reasons for that. So the first one actually is you're building the muscle. Like you are trying to learn something, the process of being able to actually break down your thought process of how you do something. That's a useful thing to start doing early, because it means that you're more likely to be able to delegate in the future, because you're getting clear around actually where are the handoffs between different processes and how should you do it in a particular way. And so that's a useful thing, is like just building that muscle. The second is actually consistency for your clients. Like the temptation as a business owner is, well, I'll just do it the way that's right. And often that's great, because you'll you'll iterate and improve upon what you're doing. The problem is when that starts to mean not just improvements, but inconsistency in the way that you do it. And so if you're inconsistent in the way that you describe your services, then the expectations of your clients are inconsistent, which means that then your service delivery has to be inconsistent to match what they're expecting. Otherwise, it's going to be inconsistent with what they're expecting, and that creates issues and friction. And so, and if you've agreed slightly different terms and pricing and whatever, then the way in which you process your invoicing and everything, like that inconsistency grows through your business. And that means, firstly, you'll get problems with clients that aren't happy because it doesn't quite align. Secondly, it takes you a lot more time to have to switch in all these different ways. And then thirdly, it's a lot less profitable as well, because you're not able to kind of build the consistency. Like Emma James is a great example, because we both saw her speak live at the Digital Accountancy Show. And one of the things that she was talking about is how consistency of client and how they work and pricing and everything has been crucial to the way that her business works, because she wanted to put in so much technology and automation. And so it doesn't work if you've then got to deal with 10 different ways in which you are going to do things. If like not using Xero, and we use QuickBooks. Like she's like, no, it doesn't work then. I only work with Xero, and I only work when it's in this particular way. And so I think that that's where a lot of profitability comes from. Like I interviewed Reza Huda on my podcast, De-Stress Your Business, recently, and essentially about the concept of profitability and what makes a profitable business. And largely, like the main thing was, it's about being really specific on your customer, so that all the work that you're doing does not have high inconsistency in it, that you're able to deliver in a very consistent way, and it reduces the cost that you've got. And so I think that's one of the things. I think the other thing is it actually does free up your time. I was talking to, I think, another member of your group, Kate Powell from Bookkeeping, and she was talking about how she sees how documenting a task, even for her to do as a checklist, will free up her time. And the way that we were talking about it, she was saying it's like it removes the procrastination, because rather than thinking like, oh, is it that VAT treatment or is it this one or whatever, it's like if it was written down, you just go, check the VAT treatment is this, and here's a table. Yeah, it is done. Move. And we likened it a little bit to like packing for a holiday, where if you don't have any kind of packing list, you will spend a lot of your time just going, what else? What else? Is there anything else? Whereas if you've got a packing list, particularly one that you've used before, that worked for a previous holiday, you don't spend time doing that, because you look at the list and go, towels. Okay, well, I've put them in the tumble dryer. That's all that's left now. I've ticked everything else off the list. You can move on. And so it's interesting that even an example like Kate was sort of describing, how even an example of that, she's able to free up time, even if it's a task that she's not even handed over yet. But of course, the other nice thing is that once you have got it captured, it becomes very easy to hand over. Yes. And actually, when you do capture it in the detail, you start realizing, I don't actually need someone that's got 10 years of bookkeeping experience. I can bring someone who's got 1 year or 3 years or 0 years, or is a VA from, based in the Philippines or whatever. Like, all of those things suddenly become possible because you've been able to break down the decision-making process that you're going through as part of that exercise. So yeah, even as a very small business and early, it can yield a lot of value.
I think it's like really confidence boosting. I remember, when you do VAT returns, they're quarterly, and once a quarter you go, oh, what was it I did with that thing? And every time, and you'd kick yourself and you think, right, just write a little post-it note, or in the old days we used to have big old folders. I actually think it's harder without, like, I used to pick up a folder and that would be the client, and I'd have sticky notes or little notes inside, and that was it. Now everything's gone paperless and digital. Is amazing, but things get lost. Things, little, like those things that you can't have little post-it notes in a digital file in that way, and not on Google Drive or Word documents and things.
Yeah.
For me as
Can
well.
essentially an AirManual, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool, exactly. You need those little, and you lose that. And I think we're building businesses. We are grown-ups. We understand that we don't know what the future holds. So we have to have contingencies in place for if we weren't able to serve our clients. So as a solo practitioner, we have to have contingency in place that if we couldn't do it, someone else could do it. How are they going to know what to do with your clients and how you deal with that VAT and how you deal with that payroll and how you deal with the tips that come through the till? All of those little things that it's future proofing. But also I find that when I had these systems and processes in my business, I was able to sell with more confidence. Because I knew that it wasn't just relying on me, that if I did get taken ill, or if the kids were ill and had to do something, or if I wanted a holiday and I needed, to utilize a subcontractor or something, it was okay. It was all there and it was out of my head. And I've really been able to as well build a team and picking people with the right values and characteristics that I wanted rather than technical know-how, because that wasn't as much needed. Yes, I wanted them to have some kind of understanding and level, but actually in COVID, I took on my son at 18 and he worked his way up through the business with no skills whatsoever because the checklists and the systems and processes were there ready for him to follow. Could they have been better? I've seen AirManual. Yes, they could have been a lot better. And I struggle with blank page syndrome when it comes to systems and processes. Like looking at something and going, well, where do I start? So much so that I think it was 2014, I invested in a system called Pure Bookkeeping System from Australia, I think it was at the time. And I bought manuals and manuals and manuals of already written up systems and processes. Now, the problem was, when I started reading them, there was no VAT, it was all GST, because that's the Australia. And everything was in Australian dollars. And actually, some of the ways they did things, I was like, well, I wouldn't process it like that. But it was in a manual and it was paper and it gave me a certain level of confidence. Actually, I don't think I showed one member of my team because I kept looking at it and thinking, well, this is not how we do things. And I'd spent hundreds of pounds on it. So, and it wasn't amendable and changeable. But I do think with having something that's like a starting point, even if it's really basic, you go, oh, well, what? Oh, at that point, I know what I do there. Or, you can amend it. So I think that's handy. So I think with AirManual, you are looking at bringing some things in like that for bookkeepers, aren't you? Because you've got bookkeeper and accountancy clients using it.
Yeah, that's right. So I think, and I love that point around removing that blank page paralysis, because I think that's really key. I mentioned about the fact that we made it possible so that you could get essentially any process documented and handed over in less than 15 minutes. And a big part of that is how we remove that blank page paralysis. So there's a few ways in which we do that. So one is that we have an AI integration that leverages a load of best practice that we feed in via essentially an API into essentially a sort of ChatGPT-4, and then it comes out, but it comes out in the layout that you want for a really easy to follow checklist. Because obviously, if you could, you put in ChatGPT, hey, give me a process for reconciling accounts in Xero, and it'd be terrible. Like you'd spend so much time editing, it'd be better off starting from scratch. So what we did was we kind of built how should it look? How do you keep it simple? How do you keep it concise? How do the titles of the steps need to be written in a certain way to make them easy to follow? And so we built that into that. So it means that any task you can put in the title, like how to reconcile bank accounts in Xero, and then you can give it additional context. For example, if you had a transcript of a video of a Loom video, whatever, of you describing how to do it, or if you had already written some Word document somewhere else or whatever, you can dump that in or not and just generate, and then it gives you a really good starting point. And it's really interesting. I've had some where, because I've done that live when I've been doing speaking or webinars. I've done it, with conversation with customers, and I kind of always say, look, it's a starting point, and the whole point is that you're going to change most of it and tailor it. But it's surprising the number of times people are like, wow, that's way better than I thought it was going to be. And it's like, yeah, that's 95% there. I remember having hearing from one customer call where literally they went, yeah, that's better than what I was going to do. And so they used that as instead. So that's one way in which we do it. The other thing that we do is we already have over 200 templates covering things like employee onboarding and how to run a one-to-one with a direct report and how to send a quote and all these sorts of things. And we're currently building on that specifically by adding a load that are very specific to bookkeeping and accountancy practices. We're in the process of compiling those templates, but also a guide for bookkeeping and accountancy practice owners on how to build a practice that doesn't rely on you. And it goes through these templates around things like client onboarding and anti-money laundering and client offboarding and how to deal with customer complaints and all these sorts of things that many of which are specifically relevant to accountancy and bookkeeping businesses. And so we're kind of building that in collaboration with amazing people such as yourself, Joe, as you know. And so so we're building that all together. I think at the point of publication of this episode, it won't be quite ready to go, but we do have a waiting list that people can sign up to get that as soon as that's available. That's available at airmanual.link/6FB, and that's the number 6 and then FB. So people should go there and put in your contact details, and as soon as it's available, we'll send it over so that you've got that for free. Because I think, as you say, like back when you bought that systems and processes set from that company in Australia, like it does help. Like it does, having that starting point is helpful, but it's even more helpful if you've got something that's editable, and it's even more helpful if you've got a guide around how to actually tailor it and make it fit for you, because that's our big thing, is exactly as you say, like it's got to make it work for how you want to work, not just an out the box thing.
It's like accountability is needed, isn't it, on how to utilize it, and what does best practice look like when you've got your systems and processes right. So I mean, if somebody works through this and they get everything systemized and they've got this AirManual that is basically, this is how we do things here, people can come into the business, get really a grip with the culture and how to do things. What kind of impact can this have on a business?
Oh, it can be literally life-changing. So we've had clients. So if I think about the owner of an accountancy practice that we were working with, Ian over at MBS Accountants, I remember for him, one of the first challenges that they were in a situation where they had stopped taking on new clients because the client onboarding process was so clunky that it was causing them a lot of pain. Both him and his business partner, who's also his wife, had to be involved in multiple stages, and just to save the client relationship, because it's like you've been to all the networking events, you've followed up with that that contact, that business owner, over months, possibly even years, and then finally they've said, hey, you know what, Joe, I am ready to change my bookkeeping or accountancy provider, and I really like the way that you talk about business and what it sounds like you do for clients. Yeah, I'd like to get started. Like, if your process of how you then send the quote or work out their needs and send the quote and then get them set up and migrate and set up and so on, if that's not smooth, you're at risk of losing that hard-earned customer. And so typically what happens is the practice owner has to step in really heavily. And so for Ian, he was having to spend all of his time just jumping in on these various problems, and there was a lot of double handling and inefficiency. So they stopped taking on new clients, and we worked with them to get that process documented and implemented across the team. And one of the first things that happened actually was they identified a load of double handling. So activities that were actually done by two separate teams. They weren't even aware that they were both doing it. And so that was just a waste of time. They also identified activities that were drop balls. There were things that one team thought the other team was doing and vice versa. And so it wasn't getting done at all. And that was causing problems months down the line, which resulted in a load of waste. They also identified activities that were out of line with their brand. So they were able to fix that. And they were able to make it smooth enough that meant that the business owners didn't need to be involved in client onboarding. And so as a result, their time was freed up. And so they started taking on new customers again. And it was really funny because it was only like maybe 3 months later, I was talking to the owner of a marketing agency who sort of reached out to us and said, hey, can we have a call? I'd like to explore it. And I said, oh, so what was the reason that you reached out? He said, well, I just had this amazing onboarding experience with a new supplier of mine. And I thought, you know what, we need that. I need that in my business. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what was the business? Oh, it was an accountancy. It was MPS Accountants. I was like, oh, that is awesome. Like, because they hadn't even mentioned that that was the case. And so that's a nice example where their starting point was just letting go of client onboarding, but it completely changed how they were able to work, because then it meant that the business owners were able to spend more time on acquiring new clients. And so over the next 12 months, their profit massively increased to the point that they were part of a mastermind group with about 70 other really decent size sort of mid six-figure, high six-figure, and some seven-figure businesses in there, and they had the highest percentage increase in growth over the 12 months of any other business in that group. And I love that, because at the same time as that period, they had also spent less time in the business than ever before, because the business wasn't as dependent on them. And so they're able to go on, they've got lovely, really big family, and they're able to go and spend long times on the holidays and time together and all that kind of stuff. And it's that's what really excites me, is how life-changing that can be, how they were able to spend more time with their kids, how they're able to go and travel and have holidays and just relax, but also work on the business as well. So I know in Ian's case, as a result of that, he was able to do something he's been wanting to do for a while, which was start podcasting. So he now has the Leaky Bucket podcast and is now starting to do sort of coaching of other accountancy businesses and all. And just like, I just love the fact that when you free yourself up, you're able to then do more things that are aligned to your values and your kind of vision and everything. So yeah, there's loads of examples where we've had those where people have fundamentally unlocked their growth or been able to spend time on the things that matter most. And I was talking to a business owner recently who she's been holding back on starting a family, because the business is too dependent on her, and she's working 70-hour weeks and can't imagine taking 3 months out of the business. And I love the fact that we're able to say, okay, we can help you with that. Like, we can get you to a point where actually you're not required in the business day to day, and you can totally do that. Like,
it's massive.
It is massive. And so that's the kind of impact that doing this can have.
I think it's like a mindset shift that we need to go through, because I think growing up, I don't know about you, but growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was very much the hustle culture. It was like, the more hours you put in, the more money you'll get back. And this is fundamentally a shift. It's like getting everything out and earning more money, but doing less. And for lots of us, millennials or whatever you want to, say, lots of us, we struggle. We think, that feels a bit off. Like, can we do that? Feel naughty, feel like we're, I don't know, cheating in some way. But actually what it means is that you can have bigger impact elsewhere. And think about that, the fact that the client went through such an amazing onboarding procedure and system that he was like, I want this for my business. And then that's impacted, that the impact that you have goes on and on and on. Also thinking about the fact that if you're not holding up and being the bottleneck and the pinch point, and your clients seamlessly going through and their bookkeeping services are getting done, and you're able to give them up-to-date, more accurate figures more quickly, who knows what impact that's going to have on their lives and their businesses. It isn't just about, it is, yes, of course, profit is important, but time and freedom, that's what I'm hearing. It's like really freeing to be able to know that all your businesses documentation, and if you want to change it, it's fine as well. There's flexibility, nothing's set in stone. I'm not sitting there carving it into a manual that can never change. It's not one and done. It'll be forever, I'm sure, improving and changing, but we don't know what is coming up in the future. But you do know what you know now. And if you got that out of your head and realized that, and actually getting other people and being collaborative about it when people come in and letting them say, well, actually, have you thought about it this way? Because just because you've done it that way all the time doesn't mean it's best practice. I think you're building a really great culture. And also, I can definitely see how they're going out there selling more profitably as well, because you'll be able to sell higher because the value that you're giving is better. It's better value, better outcomes. So I think this is really, really exciting. I mean, what misconceptions do people have about because there'll be people here thinking something that I've not thought about what's the negatives and misconceptions of getting your systems and processes documented?
Yeah, so the probably one of the most common misconceptions that I see is people think, oh, I have to document everything, and so it'll take me a long time. And the first mistake they're making there is to think everything needs to be documented. And we can immediately break that down by saying, really, do you need a process, for example, how to open an email? It's like, well, no, not obviously that. Okay. What about going to the toilet? No, not that. Okay. How about answering the phone? And you go, well, answering the phone, maybe. It depends. Good. It does depend, but it depends on what. And really what it comes down to is it causing a problem? Like, for example, if you're a business where it's like, yeah, you know what, we work with, I don't know, businesses that are run by celebrities. And so it's really important that when we answer the phone, it's in this particular way and we know exactly who they are. Like, we can't do any of this. Hang on, sorry, who are you? Like, no, we don't want that. So we need someone who they answer the phone this particular way and they're able to quickly identify who it is and so on. Then yeah, maybe you need a process around that. But if it's not causing any pain, if it's not a problem, then why would you spend a load of time documenting it right now? There are other places in your business where you're going to get value. And so that's the key, is turning it on its head and saying, actually, where's going to have the biggest impact?
Yeah.
Where in my business right now is causing most pain? And maybe it's because it's causing clients a bad experience. And so it's risking sales, risking retention. Maybe it's a part of your business where it relies on one person and therefore there's risk, because if it's you, then, and you suddenly have an accident or a bereavement or get sick or, whatever, you don't want to harm your clients in that way, that suddenly stuff stops. So you need to make sure, like, how does, exactly as you said earlier, Joe, how do I make sure that someone else, even if I have to outsource it on a temporary basis, someone else can do this? So that might be a biggest pain point. It might be something that's taking a lot of your time. Like a lot of my clients, when I ask them, what's the thing that takes up most of your time? And it might be something like sending quotes to customers. And it'll be something that's like taking them like 3 hours a day. And you go, well, that's 15 hours a week on one process. And we get it documented and handed over in like 15 minutes, half an hour. And suddenly we've saved them 15 hours a week by investing 30 minutes. And I think that's the key, is that rather than thinking, oh, I need to spend the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months documenting everything in my business and then I'll start getting value. It's like, no, in an hour and a half, you should be able to get 15 hours a week. Like we even call it our 15-hour club. That's people who've worked with who have freed up 15 hours per week of their time as a result of doing this. And typically you're talking small amounts. So that's the first biggest misconception that people have. I think the other one that's a really big one, is that documenting processes is homework. It's the thing you do after doing it. So they think, oh, well, let's say, I need to hire and train this new bookkeeper. So what I'll do is I'll hire them, I'll bring them in, I'll tell them everything that they need to do, get them all trained up on all these processes. And then after that, when I know how the process should be done and how I've trained it, then I'll document it. It's like, why? What a complete wrong way round. Like, it means that you're basically going, yeah, when I've got to a point where it's going to add nearly zero value to document it, that's when I'll do it. Because the truth is, you won't then. It's too late. You've already put in the hundreds of hours spoon feeding this brand new bookkeeper. And by the way, that you've had to hire an experienced bookkeeper because you've not got anything written down. Do it the other way around. It's not homework. Do it the other way around. Instead, document the process, how you want it to be done, and then review. Actually, do I need an experienced bookkeeper to do this, or could this be done by a VA or a brand new bookkeeper or whatever? And then you go, actually, yeah, it could be someone much more junior. Like, for example, in my businesses, my bookkeeping is not currently done by an external bookkeeping organization. I long time ago when I first set up, didn't know that really even existed as a thing. I thought it was like a thing that accountants
We're not very
do,
good at marketing.
and I thought they were just expensive, so I didn't use them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing all my bookkeeping, and then
Yeah.
I documented it. I handed it over to a finance administrator who had never done anything in finance, no bookkeeping, anything. She was just a maths grad that was struggling to get a job, but she's really smart, had great attention to detail, and she could follow the process. And so within 2 days, she was doing all the payroll that we needed to do our side to work with 6 employers of record in different countries around the world. By the end of the week, she'd taken over all accounts payable and accounts receivable. By the end of 3 weeks, she'd taken on all my recording and reporting. And after 4 weeks, she was even doing my R&D tax claim as well, all following the processes that I had documented for myself back when I was doing it, right? And so when you then realize, oh, actually, you know, if I don't do it as homework, if I do this up front, you realize that actually what you hire can be a lot cheaper, and you can get someone that's a bit more fresh, and you can get them doing it in the way that you want it rather than come with all their own bad habits. And then, of course, training them becomes so much faster because you basically give them the process and say, right, you walk through it. If you get stuck, ask me any questions. And then they go through it and you go, oh, hang on, you've done it in that way. Why have you done that way? And they say, well, it says this. And you go, I see, you misunderstood what I meant. Okay, how do I change it so that it makes sense? And then you change it and you improve it, and they learn, and you're not spoon feeding, and they've got something they can refer back to, which means typically, I remember one business we worked with, she worked out that she saved 200 hours in the training of each new employee that she had. 200 hours per employee by having documented before rather than after that they joined. And so that's one of those
amazing
ones that we see. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, I love I love what you said about, we do, don't we? We think systems and processes. Why do we automatically think now this is going to take over my whole life? Yeah, I've definitely heard that before. But I like to think, I had a coach once who said every time that you have an issue, it's an amazing opportunity so that you never have that issue again. So if I ever found myself firefighting something or dealing with a client that's, I felt like I was constantly firefighting, always an issue going on. I used to have an issues list. I write it down, and then how can I make a system and process or change something in our current systems and processes so that it never happened again? And then I kind of realized that was my job, really, as a business owner. That's my job, to make sure that things like that never happen again. How do I improve? And it's constant, those little tweaking and everything. And it really does build confidence. That is building a business as such, because there's always going to be something that comes up that you haven't thought of, and being okay with that and apologizing and knowing that, do you know what? I now know that is never going to happen again. So I can have a really great conversation with the client and say, apologies, that went wrong. This is what happened, but this is what we're doing to change it. Those clients love it when you do that, because they know, they recognize it in themselves. They make mistakes. Things go wrong in their business all the time. So I love that. I also love the thought about newbies in the business. I've always done this as well. And it's right. When you give them a system or process to follow, if you've completed it, you've done it with your 20 years of experience, and you've forgotten those little nuances, the things, because it's just natural to you. So it's great when you use a newbie, because they go, well, what about, I mean, I literally had to have a system to tell my son to open his emails every day, because he didn't know that was a thing. He was like, what, every day? I'm like, yeah, mate, every day. He's like, wow, okay, this is intense. So it's really funny. But if you don't know, you don't know. And that's the beauty of doing this with new people, and not people that are set in their own ways and that have got, which does, again, save you money and helps you be more profitable. I think, Alexis, we could talk about this forever. And
do that then.
Yep. But I'm sure that there are lots of bookkeepers and accountants watching thinking, oh, you've made this now more exciting and more of an opportunity than that homework that I was dreading and thinking it would take up a really long time. And I think that's the whole thing. When you've got a really great piece of software, when you've got a way of a system about creating systems, that's sometimes the first hurdle, because looking at that blank page going, well, what does it need to look like? And also the fact that it's amendable and it's not set in stone, and that it can grow with you in your business. How great could you feel in 6 months' time, having this kind of, not maybe every system and process in your business, but some solid ones that that the business could cope if something happened. I think that helps all of our blood pressure and sanity. So use the link below, airmanual.link/6FB, to get on the wait list for some bookkeeper and accountancy specific guidance, training, options, tools that are coming out in the future for you all. And Alexis, thank you so much for joining us today. Learned so much. It's been really insightful. Usually we think this stuff's boring, but it's not at all. It can be really exciting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Jo. And yeah, what I'll make sure I do is that anyone that signs up for that waiting list, I'll make sure we send over in the meantime while they wait for the bookkeeping specific ones. We've got some great guides on how to make this stuff easier and how to get started. So I'll make sure that we send those over to anyone that signs up for that. And if anyone wants to connect with me on social media, it's Alexis Kingsbury. And of course, do check out our podcast, De-Stress Your Business.
Amazing. Thank you, Alexis, so much. And we'll see you all this time next week for the Bookkeepers Podcast. Take care. Bye.